Why am I not moving? Chapter 2. I want to give you just one analogy of this from a school turnaround perspective. When I arrived at this one school and took the position there, I knew that the Lord had given me some particular skills. And as we moved into the situation, understanding the school dynamics and what needed to be done, anyone in that position, I could understand why the school was in the condition that it was in. Remember in some of my other podcasts, I shared that sometimes in leadership, sometimes in family situations, sometimes in relationships, sometimes in this situation, sometimes in this situation, there are some of us who have not been equipped with certain skills, and as a result of that, we find ourselves deficient. And sometimes, if we're not careful, this deficiency will keep us from trying to seek knowledge on how to make change. I'm going to say that again. Sometimes as a leader, that's a leader in your family, that's a leader in your business, that's a leader in your classroom, that's a leader in life, sometimes because of our past and because of our exposure, we come into situations lacking in skills. And when you're lacking in skills, it doesn't make you a bad person. That means I just didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do. And as a result of that, the situation does not move. The reason why my business is failing is I love my business. I came in with the right mindset, but I didn't have the skills. And because things kept piling up, I didn't know what to do. And as a result of that, everything that I touched was now lacking. I couldn't do anything. It got worse, it got worse. And please know that sometimes situations can come your way where the situations are so heavy, so strong, that you will shut down from fear. I can't do anything. I don't know what to do. It affected my body. It affected my interpersonal skills. I couldn't think right. And as a result of that, I started to act out. Coming into this one situation, and I can't get into detail about every single thing that was lacking at the school level. I'm just going to give you a couple of the things that I faced when I came in. The first thing that I do when I got there was the building was filthy. I'm not talking it was dirty. I'm talking about filthy. And when I say filthy, I mean that there was stuff everywhere. I couldn't even believe that students was attending a building like this. It was filthy. It was filthy. It was absolutely filthy. Thing number 2, the records room, where you have all of the students' records. As I walked into that situation, the records were not even categorized. They were simply just laid out on tables, laid out in floors. There was no dates, it was a mess. There were papers every single place. Matter of fact, I seen the young lady who was working there, and I don't blame her for anything. I'll go back to the administration, the prior administration, and I don't say anything bad about the administration. I think it just got too big and it become overwhelming and it was just lacking. And as a result of that, everything around them was lacking. The record rooms, they literally had papers just scattered on a table and floors. They were all intermingled with each other. Another thing was the building had become overrun. I'm just saying this because it's the truth, with rats. I didn't know once I got in there. I was trying to get myself organized my first couple of days of school, so I was working late. When the building was empty, I could hear things. They had a tile roof. The drop ceilings, when you had panels there. And while I'm sitting there and the building is completely quiet, I could hear rats. I didn't know it was rats then, but I could hear things moving in the ceiling. I could hear that. And each time I would move, it would stop. And I would sit in the downstairs cafeteria area, which was also a multi-purpose area, and sit there wondering what that sound was. And then in a few minutes, I would hear something scurrying above me. The very next day I came back, and this is within the first 3 days of me being there, I get a call from the area superintendent who said that they wanted to meet with me, that they heard I was a new school director. So I went to her office there, and she was very frank with me, and she said, Dr. Evans, has the school board made you aware of what you're stepping into? And my words to that, I said, well, I think they've shared as much as they knew about. Now, you got to remember, these were school board members who did not inherit this, but they stepped in to assist in the transformation of the building. So they had no idea of the inner workings or the concerns except for the letters that have come from the board, from the district, from the auditors, etc., about the program, and they knew that it needed to be fixed. Because as shared with them, that the county had made it very clear that the school was going to be closing in 2 years. Now, as I spoke with the then superintendent, and as she said to me, do you understand what the situation that you're in? As I listened to that, I didn't. And she wanted to know then, what is your plan of action? I said, ma'am, I've only been here about 3 days now. You've been in for 3 days. So how are you planning on changing the school around? And honestly, this was my words. I said, ma'am, I don't have a plan. So then she said, have you moved your family down here? I said, yes, I have. And then she said, you do know that we're going to be closing that school in 2 years, if not early, if we can. This has been an eyesore for the county since its conception. I never agreed with it. And our governing board members, they never agreed with it. The school is closing in 2 years, and you don't have a plan. I said, well, ma'am, I think I do have a plan, if I may say this. And she said, yeah, tell me what your plan is. And I said to her, I'm going to be trusting in God to guide me through this. And she said, I beg your pardon? I said, I'm going to be trusting in God to guide me through this. That's what my plan is. She said, I had a chance to look at your resume of accomplishments, and I must say, you have been very successful in what you do, but you don't understand what you're facing right now. And that's your plan, that you're trusting in God. I said, yes, I am. And I said, ma'am, I also like to add, and I began to laugh at this. If I should fail in this mission, I'm taking no responsibility for that. She said, I beg your pardon? I said, if I should fail, which I will not, God has been true to what he has said. But if I should fail, I'm not taking any responsibility for that, because I'm totally trusting in God. And she said, well, I guess we're going to see what your God does. I said, I guess we're going to see. And when I left out of there, in the different schools that I've been through, that's the first time that I went to a district area superintendent who told me emphatically that we're shutting that place down. Wow. I can tell you right now, people, when you place in a situation like that, there is going to be a level of fear. There is going to be a level of uncertainty. I went back to the office the next day, and the phone rang, and it was the auditor for the building. He called me that morning. He had just finished up with the school audit for that year, and it was a scathing report for the second year. And he says, Dr. Evans, I want to make this very clear to you. If your records look anything like this at the end of this school year, with the money you're getting from federal funds, state funds, and the outcome of your audits, your records, your financials, etc., I can tell you right now that I'm going to be recommending to the county as well as to the state that this program be shut down immediately for this misappropriation of funds. Now, I haven't even seen the auditor's report. I don't even know what he's talking about. And he abruptly hung up, and you could feel his level of frustration. And as I found out later, he had had numerous conversations over the years with the director of the school and the governing board, and the changes were made. Well, now I can tell you the level of fear and uncertainty is mounting. As I tried to get my hand around records, etc., and everything was in disarray, I get a call from the front office desk that the fire marshal is on campus. So, of course, I've had my time with fire marshals, and those are the people who will hit you the hardest as far as the opening of your school day. So I go out and I meet the fire marshal, and of course I'm being cordial and loving as I always am. And the fire marshal asked me to do the building walkthrough with him and additional stuff, and he began to explain that he's been to this site numerous times and there has been no improvements made, and he is going to make a recommendation to the county that we not open for this year when he comes back in August. I was like, oh my God. And I immediately say, brother, please allow me an opportunity to get some things in place. And he says, Mr. Evans, the way I look at this, you got about 60 days to do this, because I'm going to be coming back here the last of July, and my plan is for you not to be opening the doors. This place right here is unsafe, it's filthy. So as we did a building walkthrough of the campus, I'll simply say I could not believe what I saw. There are certain standards for building occupancy, especially with children. I can tell you, as I left the campus after the first week of school, after the first week of me being on campus, and the board president at the time asked me to give him a list of my 3 priorities on campus. And I think that turned out to be about a 3-page deal of things that need to be taken care of immediately. I'm only going to give you a couple of things that we did. And as my daughter came to the campus today with my spouse to see me, we were going to have lunch together that day. That was the first time that they had been to the school, inside the school. They had seen the outside of it, which was not very impressive. It was one of those places that you would drive past several times because it was in an old metal building. It was one of those places that if you didn't know it was a school there, you'd drive right by it. That's you just drive right by it. It was an eyesore in the community. So as my daughter and my spouse came into the building for the first time, and my daughter has been through with me several transitions of schools, and she was just a little girl then. And she said to me, very frankly, but lovingly, and only as a child could say it, Dad, this is going to be a tough one. Dad, this is going to be a tough one. I can tell you from the meaning of fear that you've invested time, money, relocating everything. Fear came over me. It affected my body. It affected my interpersonal, where I couldn't talk. This was the only thing on my mind cognitively. It almost changed my behaviors. And even though I've been through this many times, there was a level of uncertainty of how am I going to do this? And with my genealogy, even though that I had been successful, I came from good genealogy, I knew what God could do. I knew what God could do. And the only thing that I could think about doing after I gathered myself over the weekend was to move. I had to start moving. I could spend the next several podcasts talking about what we did to change the situation. But as far as the cleanliness, there was limited budget. So we couldn't have someone come in here and clean it up. So I, as the building director, along with a couple other members of the team, of the staff members there, and for the staff members of this school, if you know what I'm talking about, words cannot express my gratitude for your work in the change of this school. If it had not been for you, there is no way the school would have stayed open. Everyone picked in as an example of how we need to make change. So I had to use my money, and I thank God for meeting a man. I'm going to call his name. His name is Nathan Patton. And wherever he is right now, I hope that he doesn't mind me calling his name. I don't think he will, because he was one of those people that God sent to me at the right time and the right place in the right seasons. So what I'm talking to you about right now as I speak about this, when it comes to your fear, your uncertainty, your genealogy, if you become aggressive and start to move, God has someone who is waiting on you. He's going to place someone who's going to provide everything that you need. He's going to send you someone who's going to provide everything that you need. And this brother of mine, who's still my good friend today, Nathan Patton, my. The right man for the season. He came into my life. There was another gentleman there, and I'm going to call his name as well. I almost get emotional about it. He was a para-ed at that time who became one of our dean of students who had remarkable skills as it relates to children. And his skills were not being utilized. His name was Mr. Berry. And we went to work. We moved. We began to clean the building from top to bottom. And I also want to recognize Mr. Ben, who was the building engineer at that time. And Mr. Ben, when I questioned him about the state of the building, he said, Mr. Evans, I tried many times to keep things in line, but it was too much. It was too much. And as a result of that, I couldn't move. We encouraged that gentleman, and he went back to work with the new vision, and we got that school cleaned up. I'm not even going to tell you in details about how we got rid of the rats, how we cleaned the ceiling tiles. It was absolutely, we worked 12 hours a day. 6 days a week for nearly 2 months, getting the school ready for opening. We worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. And I'm not just talking about the physical labor. We're talking about the mental piece of it, because it was hot, it was filthy, it was questionable, and it was full of doubt of how we were going to do this. We did that for 2 months, 12 hours a day. That's the time that I also met Mr. Alex, our head of technology, a young person coming in. The man walked right through my door. I thank God for him. He's a part of my podcast. Who came in with our technology was so bad, the rats had eaten through many of the phone lines, the communication pieces. And what he did to go in there to establish a technology program for not only that campus, but for 2 other campuses that we opened up at a different time. His skills as a young person coming in, he was fearless. But as I spoke to him years later, yes, he was fearful. Yes, he was uncertainty, but we hit it aggressively. We hit it aggressively. This is end of Why Am I Not Moving, chapter 2.